Welcome crew, guys, gals, ghoul, and anyone else who may be listening beyond the Omniverse tonight. Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a rocky mountain high, get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners, and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in Colorful, Colorado. It is Saturday, July 22nd, Sunday, July 23rd for those of you across the pond and beyond. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, and welcome to We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. I'm your host, TessaTNT, and we are broadcasting live from the Mile High Clubhouse tonight. I hope you guys are staying cool. It's hot all around the world. India, they have some flooding going on, and even on the east coast of the United States, it's pretty insane, pretty intense. I hope you guys are staying safe wherever you may be. If you're listening to us live right now, you're listening to us on Spreaker as well as eTalk Radio, which you can find at etalk.tv/radio. You may also find us live on KPNL Radio, which you can find at kpnl@-db or kpnl-db.com. If you want to listen to us in your free time, whether you're working it, or working out, make sure you tune into us under We Are Paradox Media at Spreaker, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Facebook, Tumblr, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podcast Chaser, and Podvine. As I've mentioned before, we are still working on Amazon, but it's going to take a little bit of time. It's pretty quiet out there, I must say. So tonight we have a story time with me, TessaTNT, and we're going to be reading from the world's 100 Greatest Mysteries, Strange Secrets of the Past Revealed. So today was a good day. Last night, not quite so much. Yes, my two youngest children got baptized today, so that was awesome. They both had to be dunked twice. I'm telling you, it's not because of my genetics. It's because Floyd kicked his foot out of the water when he was dunked, and then Lily, her big toe came out. So they were both double dunkers, and it was pretty cool, pretty damn cool. Make sure all the sound is bouncing, sound is working. Yep, we're all good. I also have to check my butt because the butt is for eTalk Radio. Yes, looking good. So, I don't know, I was tempted to go back because during the last hour of the show, the last time, there was no sound. So, I think we're going to go back into the unknown. Amelia Earhart's Ride into Oblivion. More than 6 decades ago, after her strange disappearance over the Pacific Ocean, the world still wonders what happened to Amelia Earhart, the perky young gal who was trying to make history by flying around the globe. Most investigators theorize that her small plane ran out of gas and crashed into the ocean, but other views continue to hold the public's imagination. Some say that she was captured and executed by Japanese soldiers. Others believe Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, crashed on a remote island and were cannibalized by headhunters. Theories have also been raised that the pair of flyers survived the escape to Europe, where they lived as lovers. So I do believe, and it's probably History Channel's fault, that Amelia Earhart and Mr. Noonan did crash on, some sort of desert island. There wasn't a lot of food or anything as far as coconuts, etc. But yes, they were eaten not by headhunters, but by crabs. It's pretty freaky. Thomas E. Devine, who served on the Japanese-held island of Saipan shortly before World War II, said he and other American soldiers saw Earhart's Lockheed Electra 10E airplane at the Aslito airfield before it was burned by the Navy. In his book, Eyewitness, The Amelia Earhart Incident, Devine says, an Okinawan woman showed him two graves that supposedly contained the remains of a white man and woman who fell from the sky and were executed by Japanese troops. Stories like these have convinced Devine and many other investigators that the U.S. government knows more about the Earhart case than it will admit. The Navy's stance, he says, is blatantly false and without merit. The facts surrounding the Earhart mystery will never be officially acknowledged by the U.S. government. The latest detective work conducted by the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery has led to a document in London describing a lost collection of weather-beaten bone fragments. Because the crabs cleaned them. The bones were found in 1940 by a British colonial official visiting Nikumaroro Island, then called Gardner Island, an inhabited atoll in the Phoenix Group, about 600 miles north of Samoa and about 400 miles southeast of Howland Island, the destination Earhart never reached. The bones, including part of a skull and several long fragments, have long vanished, but it's commonly believed that they were buried or thrown into the sea or even sent to a medical museum in Fiji. D.W. Hoodless of the Central Medical School in Suva, Fiji, measured them in 1941 before they disappeared, and members of the Aircraft Recovery Group found the late British doctor's record of his measurements in 1998 while searching government archives in London. While Dr. Hoodless's work needs to be treated with caution, two American forensic scientists who examined his papers acknowledged that the bones might be those of Earhart. Not everybody shares that view, however, including Earhart's niece, Amy Kleppner, an 11th grade teacher in Montgomery County, Maryland. I've read everything written and reported about my aunt, Miss Kleppner said in a newspaper interview, and I'm convinced that she and Fred simply ran out of gas within 100 miles of Howland Island. Amelia Earhart's flight into the unknown began early in the morning of July 1st, 1937, when she and Noonan, a tall, lanky Irishman, climbed aboard her twin-engine Lockheed Electra for what was to be the last leg of their headline-making flight around the world. From Lae, New Guinea, the making flight was to take the pair to Howland Island, a tiny Pacific atoll 2,750 miles away. There they were to establish contact with a U.S. Coast Guard ship that would guide them the rest of the way on their global journey, which they would break up in a series of short leisurely hops. The next day, July 2nd, the Coast Guard ship received the following message from Earhart. Gas is running low. An hour later, she gave a final location report and then disappeared. It was assumed that their plane had simply run out of fuel and crashed into the ocean. After days of combing the ocean and hundreds of small islands in the area, the massive air-sea rescue ordered by President Franklin D. Roosevelt was called off. In its official report, the Navy declared that at about 2,300 July 3rd, the plane landed on the sea to the northwest of Howland Island, within 120 miles of the island. As far as the government was concerned, the case was closed, but others didn't want to give up. The plot thickened when rumors began to surface that the U.S. government had sent America's sweetheart, to the Pacific to spy on Japanese facilities. Unwilling to accept the loss of its heroine, the Nathan held out hope it would be found. Stories circulated for weeks about sightings on lonely atolls and faint radio messages. One message, reportedly from Earhart, said, "On coral southwest of unknown island." Richard Gillespie, executive director of the International Recovery Group, recently recovered airplane fragments that might match Earhart's twin-engine airplane. Gillespie plans to lead a full-scale expedition to Niku Maroro in 2000 to comb the 4-mile-long atoll and its lagoon for artifacts and bone fragments. Dr. Tom Crouch, senior curator of the Smithsonian Institution's Air and Space Museum, doubts anything will be found. The odds are 100 to 1 that Amelia and Fred came to rest on the ocean floor, he was quoted as saying. Ironically, Amelia Earhart's round-the-world flight was to be her last. Before departing Los Angeles on May 21st, 1937, she told a friend, "I have a feeling that there is just about one more good flight left in my system, and I hope this trip is it. Anyway, when I have finished this job, I mean to give up long-distance stunt flying." Cannibals, crocodiles, and Rockefeller. Dutch Guinea was a wild and remote place in the autumn of 1961 when Michael Clark Rockefeller, newly graduated from Harvard University with a degree in banking, arrived to film a documentary on native lifestyles. The 1,500-mile-long island contained vast, unexplored areas occupied by hundreds of ever-wearing tribes, many of them cannibalistic and touched by civilization. But primitive adventure was nothing new to the 23-year-old son of New York governor and late Vice President Nelson Rockefeller. While in school, the romantic young heir to one of America's greatest fortunes had spent months working on his farm for his father in Venezuela before going to Dutch New Guinea to help tape Native Chants. It was the island's simple, timeless beauty that brought the romantic young banker back a second time in 1961. "I see myself in the jungle," he told a friend before setting out with his camera to explore the untrained and unattained jungle. Shortly after his arrival, however, he disappeared when his catamaran overturned at the mouth of the muddy Elandin River near a place the natives call the Land of the Lapping Death, a reference to an area of mangrove swamps, murky rivers, and crocodile-infested tidal flats. Today, almost 4 decades after the tragedy, the world still wonders what happened to the young billionaire. Did sharks or ferocious saltwater crocodiles devour him, as some investigators allege, or did he survive the 4 to 7 mile swim to shore, only to be killed and eaten by cannibals? Michael Rockefeller's tragic story began shortly after he graduated from Harvard University and joined an expedition to study little-known tribes in New Guinea's Belém Valley, then under Dutch control. It was rumored that the indigenous people of the valley practiced ritual warfare, as well as head hunting and cannibalism. Young Rockefeller paid several visits to the Asmat coast, where he became enamored of the magnificent wood carvings and fantastically decorated human trophy heads. thinking they would make a great collection for his father's Museum of Primitive Art in New York. Rockefeller swapped chocolates, silver, and photographs for several of the unusual artifacts. The second week of November, Rockefeller hired Rene Wassing, a 34-year-old Dutch ethnologist and expert on primitive art, to go with him on an expedition up the coast. Local officials tried to warn him that such a trip could be dangerous. Two coastal tribes in the region, the Ashjanep and the Amadesep, were particularly unfriendly. In 1958, Dutch patrolmen had killed several members of their tribes, and they held a blood grudge against all white people. Ignoring the warnings, Rockefeller bought cosmetism and provisions and a 40-foot catamaran from a local Dutchman, then hired a couple of native guides to accompany him and Wassing. On November 18, 1961, the four set sail in the overloaded craft for a village 25 miles down the coast from the mission outpost of Agats. At about 2 p.m., a giant wave swamped their overburdened boat. As the catamaran drifted out to sea, the guides, being sturdy swimmers and familiar with the currents, volunteered to swim ashore and get help. Rockefeller and his Dutch companion agreed to remain with the boat rather than risk the harrowing swim through shark-infested waters. But no help came. Rockefeller and Wassing spent an uncomfortable night being tossed about by the waves. One big wave finally capsized the boat, forcing them to cling to the sides of their lives. At first light, they thought they saw land and tried to paddle towards it. It was then that Rockefeller, an excellent swimmer, decided he wanted to swim to shore. Wassing, who couldn't swim, begged him to stay. "Don't try it," he said. "Help will come soon." "Nothing to worry about," Rockefeller replied. "I'll be fine." He stripped down to his underwear, improvised a flotation device, and swam away. He was never seen again. Wassing was rescued the next day. In the late 1970s, a documentary filmmaker reported that he had talked with a chieftain who claimed that Rockefeller had barely stumbled ashore before he was killed, cooked, and eaten by natives. Milt Macklin, author of The Search for Michael Rockefeller, says a group of Ashjanep speared Rockefeller like a fish, dragged him to shore, killed, and ate him. Then they threw what was left of his body into the swamp, and the only reminder of Rockefeller they kept were his glasses, which several people reported seeing in the village. They, too, disappeared a few years later. What? Alright, besties, I gotta check into Facebook, even though it shows nobody is watching, nobody is listening. Perhaps you're in the pool and partaking of cocktails. I am not quite sure. Uh-oh. Steve's trying to call me. Hey, Travis. Oh, I've been checking the mail every day. I am not only waiting... Hey, Travis. Not only waiting for the painting that you sent me, every day. But also Donna Pinnock, she was going to send me a tobacco candle because I didn't mention this when you were on the show because I wanted you to have your time and discuss what you wanted to talk about. But yeah, I guess there's a Native American or indigenous person that is in his death form attached to me, and this has been going on for the last 6 months. So yeah, so she's gonna send me a tobacco candle. She also said this person didn't speak. I don't know if it's because he doesn't speak English, and our house is actually built on Excuse me. Oh, yeah, on a battleground. And um, if you could, because you are indigenous as well, Travis, that would be awesome. If you could help him to the other side, like get rid of him. Like, I don't feel like he's a pestilent, but I have had some bad things happen as far as me not being there in different outbursts. But yeah, if you could astrally come over here and talk to this guy. When you see him, don't be scared because according to Donna, he's in his death form. So yeah, he looks a little scary. But if you do want to come over here astrally and talk to him and try to get him to go to the other side, that would be amazing. But yeah, I think either when I went paranormal investigating at the cemetery, there were so many graves that were no name, like unmarked. I'm like, how could this be? Like, how could nobody know who this was? And it could be a child that was born not alive, or it could be an indigenous person that didn't speak the language. And thank you so much, Travis. Yeah, I don't feel like he's a demon. I just feel like he's frustrated because he's been stuck here for so long. He doesn't know how to get to the other side, and it could be like due to the battle and all the negative feelings that came along with it or whatever. That could be the reason he's stuck here. And I myself and my children are all gifted, so we're like a beacon. And like I said, on this property, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 houses, and then there's one across the way. But yeah, he needs me to help him, but he can't speak to me because he doesn't speak my language, and he's in his death form. So if he could do that, that'd be amazing. I would love that. I would love for him to find peace and go to the other side. Please be nice, because I feel really bad for him. This one is called Judge Crater's Strange Disappearance. Oh, Stevie Bainey thinks the show is tonight. No, Steve, it's tomorrow. Oops. Uh-oh. Yeah, the show is tomorrow night. Good looking out, though. Wish you were here. Holy shnikes. Well, at least he's on top of it. I just put there, here. All right, let's get back to it. Let's go back over here, though. Poor Steve. I feel bad, like I ditched him. I guess we got our wires crossed. So, Judge Crater's strange disappearance. So, Joseph Force Crater lived the kind of life most men can only dream of. Young, handsome, and rich, the 41-year-old New York lawyer enjoyed the pleasures the world had to offer. Yachts, travel, fast cars, private retreats, and beautiful women. As president of the prestigious Democratic Party Club of Manhattan, he was also very powerful. So powerful, in fact, that in April of 1930, he was appointed to the New York State Supreme Court. In those days, Judge Crater was the most popular man in New York City, ambitious, hardworking, and gifted with persuasive charm. He possessed an uncanny knack for being in the right place at the right time. He quickly became the darling of New York media. Hardly a day went by without his name and picture in the news. The bright political career obviously lay before this tall, dapper ladies' man who parted his iron gray hair neatly down the middle. All he had to do was stay out of trouble and remember his friends and down at Tammany Hall. On the evening of August 6, 1930, less than 4 months after his appointment to the bench, Judge Crater disappeared. One minute, he was laughing and talking with friends outside a posh Manhattan restaurant. The next, he waved goodbye, stepped into a cab, and was never seen or heard from again. Judge Crater's ride into oblivion prompted one of the most massive manhunts in New York history. After years of investigative efforts costing millions of dollars and covering several states, the fate of Joseph Forrest Crater remains an unsolved mystery. To understand the story, it is necessary to go back to that summer in 1930, when Judge Crater and his family were vacationing in their cottage in Belgrade Lakes, Maine. On August 3rd, he told his wife he had to go back to New York for a few days, but he didn't explain why. 3 days later, he spent several hours at his courthouse chamber desk, going through some old files. That afternoon, he instructed his assistant. Sorry. Yes. All right, so we're on the same page now. He instructed his assistant, Joseph Mara, to cash 2 checks for him in the amount of $5,150. Later that evening, Judge Crater had dinner with 2 friends, a lawyer and a showgirl, I do declare, at a restaurant in West 45th Street. Nothing unusual happened that night, according to the lawyer's testimony, when at exactly 9:10 p.m., Judge Crater, dressed in a double-breasted brown suit, gray spats, and a fashionable high collar, waved goodbye to his companions and climbed inside a waiting taxi. That was the last that anybody ever saw him. When the judge failed to return to the cottage, Mrs. Crater became worried. He contacted his office, and on August 25th, the day his court cases were due to come up, even his law partner suspected something was wrong. First, a private search was conducted to keep the affair out of the newspaper. Nothing turned up, however, and on August 26th, the disappearance became front-page news. The police investigation revealed the judge's bank deposit box was empty, as was a private safe, and 2 personal briefcases were missing. Foul play was immediately suspected. The rumors were flying around town that the judge had simply skipped out, perhaps with a girlfriend he had reportedly been seen with in recent months. So I'm wondering if it was the showgirl. Did you go with the showgirl? Where'd you go, Mr. Crater? No. It's been known to happen. The judge's distraught widow suspected otherwise. She went on record as saying that her husband had been murdered because of a sinister something that was connected with politics. Her main suspect was Tammany Hall itself. It was her opinion that forces within the organization had killed her husband because he refused to pay them back for helping with his nomination to the bench. Other theories linked the judge's fate to organized crime. Some investigators believed he was killed after a hotel deal he helped organize went sour. The most likely explanation, according to some, was that the judge was murdered in a showgirl's blackmail scheme. I'm telling you, it was the showgirl. Killed by a gangster friend of a girl when he refused to pay more money. On June 6, 1939, almost 9 years after he went missing, Judge Crater was declared legally dead. He's gonna. Case was never officially closed, and reports about his disappearance and reappearance continue to pop up more than 6 decades later. Cooper, where are you? Where'd you go? So one stormy night in 1971, a frail, friendly man dressed in a dark business suit and wearing prescription sunglasses boarded Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 at the Portland International Airport in Oregon. Minutes after takeoff, he calmly handed cabin attendant Flo Schaffner a note saying he had a dynamite bomb in his briefcase. Dude, I swear I feel like I have an earbud in my ear. I have tinnitus, so I wear them at night so I can listen to videos and not bother my husband. And I feel like it's still in there, but it's not. All right. The passenger, who used filthy language, drank bourbon, and chain-smoked Raleigh-filtered tip cigarettes, appeared to be about 6 feet tall and in his mid-40s. He demanded $200,000 in used $20 bills. No funny stuff, he warned the stewardess, cracking his briefcase open so she could see a couple of red cylinders, wires, and a battery. It was Thanksgiving Eve. Most of the 36 passengers aboard the Boeing 727 were going home after having spent the holidays in Portland. As the plane bucked and rumbled through the storm, the last thing on anybody's mind was a skyjacking. The clean-cut man with the bomb identified himself as Dan Cooper. At least that's the name that appeared on the passenger list. Investigators are unsure who he really was, where he came from, or what happened to him. That's because only minutes after taking off from the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, where they had stopped briefly to pick up the ransom money and release the passenger, Mr. Cooper bailed out of the plane and vanished. The plane's crew was stunned. Only a lunatic would parachute into a freezing rainstorm 10,000 feet in the middle of winter. Clad only in a business suit, white shirt, and loafers, the man surely died either way on the way down or once he landed in the rugged wilds of southwestern Washington. It was obviously not well thought out, commented Ralph Himmelsbach, a retired FBI agent who has spent decades investigating the crime. It was stupid, he said. It'll sound like it. Maybe summertime? If the skyjacker didn't freeze to death on his way down, he probably died when he hit the ground. I swear to God, there's still an earbud in my ear. Wearing a faulty parachute provided by authorities in Seattle, said Himmelsbach. And he came down right smack dab in the middle of the woods in a really rugged country, he added. If the cold didn't kill him, if he withstood the powerful turbulence, Cooper was still parachuting into a dense forest at night at the onset of winter, with no food or survival gear. What kind of man would do such a thing? According to Himmelsbach, the others who have investigated the case, D.B. Cooper was either the bravest criminal in American history or the dumbest. This was a desperate act you wouldn't expect from a normal man in his mid-40s, Himmelsbach theorized. Jumping from a plane flying at 200 miles per hour in a howling storm over a snow-covered wilderness was something you would expect from somebody who had nothing to lose. Jerry Thomas, a retired Army survival instructor who has investigated the case for years, thinks the hapless skyjacker landed hard, splattered, and was swallowed by the dense expanse of firs in ravines north of the Columbia River, about 12 miles east of Vancouver. But there are those who insist that Cooper was not a lunatic, nor was he killed during the jump. In fact, some of the Air Pirates' legions of fans insist the escapade was brilliantly planned to throw investigators off the trail. A few even argue that he took part in at least one other skyjacking 3 years later. To be sure, D.B. Cooper's Thanksgiving crime was the most spectacular skyjacking in American history. It also was the only time the skyjacker of a domestic aircraft was or has eluded capture. Dan Cooper, or D.B. Cooper, was a reporter. As a reporter called him in error, became a Northwestern folk hero almost overnight. In an age of anti-Vietnam protests, Nixon, and hippies, many saw him as a loner, sympathetic anti-establishment figure who beat the odds and managed not to hurt anyone in the process. Good on you, good on you. Tales circulated about the mysterious skyjacker and how he survived the ordeal, assumed a new identity, married, and today leads a quiet life somewhere on the East Coast. In 1980, an 8-year-old boy playing along the muddy banks of the Columbia River near Portland discovered a bundle of crumbling $20 bills. The serial numbers of the bills matched those given to Dan Cooper in Seattle 9 years earlier. But those were the only bills of the air pirates' 10,000 20s to show up. Agent Himmelsbach speculated that Cooper either landed in the Columbia River and drowned, or died in the mountains and the money was washed out. Cooper believers are unfazed. Each Thanksgiving, crowds gather at taverns in the Northwest to celebrate the anniversary of their hero's famous skyjacking. At one bar in Ariel, Washington, for example, some locals believe Cooper himself once made an appearance at a party in his honor. One woman, identified only as Clara, claimed Cooper lived with her until his death from illness in 1982. Another woman living in Florida said her late husband confessed on his deathbed in 1995 that he was the real Cooper. Will the real D.B. Cooper please stand up? Perhaps the best clue to Cooper's fate came to light in 1974 when an escaped convict named Richard Floyd McCoy was gunned down in a shootout with FBI agents in Pennsylvania. A former Sunday school teacher and Green Beret helicopter pilot, McCoy had been serving a 45-year sentence for hijacking a United Airlines jet for $500,000. That's a lot of moolah. Investigators say that McCoy's technique had been virtually identical to Cooper's, down to the phrase, "no funny stuff, see?" On his note, and parachuting out of an airplane. When captured, McCoy refused to confess to being the vanished Cooper. Will the truth ever be known about America's most celebrated crime caper? It's still a pending investigation, says Seattle-based FBI agent Ray Lauer, who says the agency maintains a 60-volume file on the Cooper incident. He added the case will probably stay open forever. I don't know, I remember that scene. Man, it was the guy that played Scooby-Doo. And I think they were kayaking and they got lost in the wilderness and they found D.B. Cooper in a cabin all furry and stuff. It was Tom Selleck. Not Tom Selleck. Oh my gosh. Who was the guy that played Smokey and the Bandit? I'm so bad with names, but yeah, he was there all furry-faced and on burning the money to stay warm. Who knows? Who knows what happened to DB? It's hard to say. Paul Redfern's final flight. One sweltering August morning in 1927, thousands of anxious spectators gathered on a windy beach at Sea Island, Georgia, to watch a young Georgia pilot set out to make aviation history. Paul Redfern had dreamed of being the first person to fly nonstop from the United States to South America. Charles Lindbergh's famous flight from New York to Paris 3 months earlier had made the young Georgian more determined than ever. 25 years old and outfitted in a modern, well-stocked monoplane christened Port of Brunswick, The aviator's dream was about to come true, or so he hoped. That morning, as he taxied down the beach runway, waving to the cheering onlookers, among the spectators were his pregnant wife and several investigators in his bid to make history. After a ceremonial dip of the wings, the brightly colored plane took off into the clouds, never to be seen or heard from again. It was as if he simply disappeared, a newspaper reported, swallowed up by the great unknown like so many brave explorers before him. A massive land-sea rescue operation involving hundreds of ships and planes was launched. One party was led by swashbuckling movie idol Errol Flynn. After months of probing jungles and mountaintops in the Caribbean and parts of South America, however, the searchers called off the effort. Some believed Redfern had simply crashed into the sea. Others thought he might have died in a crash landing on some nameless island. A few said he probably made it as far as Brazil before his plane went down in a remote jungle. Redfern's destination was Rio de Janeiro, about 4,600 miles from Sea Island, almost twice the distance of Lindbergh's 2,500-mile transatlantic voyage. His flight plan was to take him from Georgia to the Bahamas, across the Caribbean, and then over to Puerto Rico. He would continue past the tropical islands of Grenada, Tobago, and Trinidad, cross the coast to British New Guinea, or Guiana, now Guyana, Dutch Guinea, now Suriname, and northern Brazil to Macapá, on the north bank of the Amazon. It's not poo, it's pa. Aboard his extensive Detroiter airplane, loaded down with about 550 gallons of fuel, he carried a 2-gallon container of drinking water, food to last 20 days, and survival equipment for ocean or jungle, including a pneumatic air raft, a small distilling outfit, mosquito netting, genuine and collapsible rifle and ammunition. Since radio instrumentation was not yet available, pilots in Redfern's day were alone among the clouds. Over the years, numerous theories emerged to account for his disappearance, some of them quite fanciful. One had him crashing into a jungle and becoming head of a tribe of Brazilian Indians. Another said Redfern was captured by a hostile tribe that used spears to discourage rescuers from reaching him. One modern adventurer claims to know where the plane went down, but says it would cost a fortune to reach the spot and retrieve the wreckage. We're talking about true dinosaur country, said retired commercial airplane pilot Robert Carlyle, who has spent years researching the Redfern story. Tillbull jungle, pristine, not even in the Indian trails. 7 years after her husband's disappearance, his widow finally gave up hope and had him officially declared dead. If anyone had seen my husband and had been with him, as some of these people say, I would think he would have given them something to prove his identity, she said. The mystery of Paul Redfern's final flight would soon be overshadowed by that of another ill-fated pilot, Amelia Earhart, who we talked about earlier, who disappeared in 1937 while on a record-breaking round-the-world voyage. The fearless Colonel Fawcett. In the spring of 1925, famed explorer Colonel Percy Harrison Fawcett embarked on his 7th and final expedition into the wilds of Brazil. His mission? Find the lost city of Z, said to have been built by survivors of Atlantis. a legendary kingdom that supposedly sank in the Atlantic Ocean thousands of years ago. For more than a decade, the British adventurer had blazed paths all over the Brazilian countryside while doing survey work for the Royal Geographical Society. Battles with giant snakes, flesh-eating piranha, and savage headhunters had not diminished his desire to explore. Now he had more reason than ever to push off into the bush. Recently discovered documents at the National Library in Rio de Janeiro had convinced the colonel that the fabled city was located in the Mato Grosso, a wild and dangerous city, was located in the realm or in the heart of the Brazilian wilderness. According to old Portuguese accounts, the Atlantean refugees had used gold brought from their doomed homeland to build temples, palaces, and magnificent wall around the city. Whoever found the lost city stood to profit handsomely, thinking a small expedition might be less threatening to hostile Indians in the region. He hired his son Jack, an 18-year-old friend of Jack's named Raleigh Rimmel, and two Mafuquas Indians as guides. Before leaving, the colonel left instructions that no rescue party should come after him should he fail to return. "It's too dangerous," he told friends and supporters. Several days into the journey, the frightened guides ran away. It was a moment of truth for the 58-year-old colonel. Should he turn back or remain on course? Never before had he beheld a wilderness so wild and untrammeled, and thoroughly unexplored as that which he was now about to enter. He and his two young companions decided to press on. On May 29th, 1925, he sent a message back to his wife. "You have no fear of failure," he wrote. That was the last anyone heard from the colonel. His disappearance shocked and saddened millions around the world, who were cheering his attempt to find Z, the name he had given the lost city. A military engineer by trade, Fawcett had sought lost cities in the jungles of Ceylon, as well as South America. Okay, so Travis is saying, "All right, I took care of the dude. Still light your tobacco candle. He was scared of the other three dark things that were there. See, I knew there was something else here. I knew that wasn't him. I knew that he was scared, couldn't speak, and was in his death form, but I did have known that there's dark stuff here." Okay, so Travis is also saying that he dispatched the darkness and set up a metaphysical crystal shield in my home. "Thank you so much, Travis." He says, "I will be okay. Thank you so much, because this has been so hard to deal with." "Thank you, my friend. I'm so happy." "Thank you." And that was funny because I was feeling like a lightness come over me. Sure what that was about. Maybe it's because I was tired, but yes, thank you so much for doing that. Oh, I'm so excited. Hello, patients. So, a military engineer by trade, Fawcett had sought lost cities in the jungles of Ceylon as well as South America. He never tired of the hardships and dangers, preferring the company of savages to civilized Boers. Forest in these solitudes is always full of voices, the soft whisperings of those who came before. He once wrote about South America. Like other adventurer explorers of his day, Fawcett believed in the legend of Atlantis. It seemed likely to him that survivors of this doomed continent reached South America, where they built cities and temples in an attempt to recreate their destroyed civilization. Earlier that year, an attempt to find the lost city had almost ended in disaster, when Fawcett was swept over a waterfall into a pool infested with piranha and alligators. Holy crap! That's scary. A little later, on a trip down the Chocolato River, his boat pilot was riddled with 45 arrows dropped by hostile Indians. They got some pretty good aim if they're hitting this one guy with 45 arrows. That's insane. Wild bulls had attacked his group before they were chased away by gunfire. But his most harrowing encounter occurred when a giant anaconda attacked them while crossing a river. In his diary, he wrote, "We were drifting easily along the sluggish current, not far below the confluence of the Rio Negro, when almost under the bow of the Agorite boat, there appeared a triangular head and several feet of undulating body. It was a giant anaconda. I sprang for my rifle as the creature began to make its way up the bank, and hardly waiting to aim, smashed a .44 soft-nosed bullet into its spine, 10 feet below the wicked head." Good to see you, Patience. I miss you. Fawcett estimated the snake to be 62 feet in length and 12 inches in diameter. Such dimensions, if accurate, would make it the largest anaconda on record. With food and supplies running low, the expedition turned back. Weary of snakes, blood-sucking bats, and exotic diseases, swarms of insects, and tangled undergrowth, Fawcett decided to regroup and resume his search later. Finding reliable companions for his dangerous trip had always been a problem. By 1925, however, Jack, a strapping teenager who shared his father's love for adventure, was eager to explore. The lure of Z fascinated young Jack as well as his father and ultimately led to their doom. 3 years later, in the summer of 1928, a search party found a small trunk believed to belong to the missing explorers, but nothing else. They were told that hostile natives had killed the 3 white men soon after they entered the heavy forest. Indians drove the rescuers out of the region before they could confirm the stories. The fate of Colonel Fawcett and his tiny expedition remained one of the most talked about mysteries of the time. In 1929, a Swiss trapper, Stefan Ratin, reported that he had come upon an old Englishman living as a well-cared-for prisoner for a group of Indians. Although the man had not given his name, Ratin's description of the man's circumstances raised hopes that Colonel Fawcett had at last been found. But when Ratin returned to rescue the fugitive colonel, Fawcett, he and 2 partners also disappeared. He said don't come for him. There's a reason for that. Jeez, nobody listens. For decades afterwards, Mato Grosso travelers reported meeting gaunt, English-speaking oldsters along the jungle paths, but no real trace of the British explorer or his 2 companions was ever found. In all probability, the fate of the dauntless explorers will forever remain a mystery. So the next chapter is Heavenly Fires and Hellish Fates. I can't wait to read that. Hey Jay, good to see you! Well, on that note, you guys, we are going to our first music break. On this break, we have the lovely and talented Jeff Hilliard from Los Angeles, California with Finger Bang Your Day, Cock That Hills, Consensual Sex Fan, Silicon Wave, and Multitude. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
When your life is a never-ending train wreck, and you feel like you're drowning in a sea of regret, with a bit of oppression pressing down on your neck, it hurts so bad. When you're overwhelmed, kills your heart's desire, and reality starts looking like a dumpster fire. You start bitching to me, but you're preaching to the choir. You don't need to be so mad, 'cause sometimes we hurt, sometimes we cry, sometimes we're sure there's no reason to try. When the whole world goes completely insane, open your heart, stand up and sing. I'm gonna finger bang my day. Yeah, yeah, I'll finger bang my day. That's right. You gotta make the choice to give it all you've got and make your day long with pleasure, really make it hot. Because your day deserves a lover that pulls out the stops. Come on, it's not so hard. 'Cause sometimes we hurt, sometimes we cry, sometimes we show there's no reason to try. When the whole world blows up in our face, what else could we do but stand up and say, I'm gonna finger bang my day. Yeah, yeah. Finger bang my day. Hey, what are we really doing? We can't live in a world that has this much hate. We have to get honest with ourselves. We have to take stock in what our part is in all of this madness. We have to let go, and we focus on giving love, setting that intention. And each and every single one of us gets up every day with the intention to give love. And we do it. We go out there and we give love every single day. Each one of us gets out there and makes love to our day, giving our day a multiple orgasm. The whole world will be orgasmic for the rest of eternity. Sometimes we hurt, sometimes we cry, sometimes we show there's no reason to try. When the whole world is fucking insane, we open our hearts, stand up and say, I'm gonna finger bang my day. Finger bang my day. Finger bang my day. Let's open our hearts, stand up and You're desperate and pathetic. Nothing but a coward. You're a fool with nothing to offer. No one will ever believe you. They see you for what you are. You're just a fraud, a shell of a person. And now the power of the spirit of penetrates the demons that haunt you. They carry you into the dark depths of hate. I am the son of open war is the fight for your life. You can get what you want and feel the hell inside. Open war is the fight for your life. To be free, you can make it right. To be free, you can make it right. To be free, you can make it right. Do you wanna go for a ride in my consensual sex van? Do you wanna go for a ride in my consensual sex van? Let me take you far away from all this huff and puff. There will be nothing in between our love, like a pair of doves flying high above, where nothing can touch us, touching softly. Don't let me go, I won't let you go. This is eternity with me, baby. Do you wanna go for a ride in my consensual sex van? Do you wanna go for a ride in my consensual sex van? You don't have to be alone. Come with me. Magic, healthy laughter, boundaries, safe space, unknowing mutual consent, passion, happily will be buried our souls, naked by the sea. We'll breathe the clean air. We'll be living, laughing, loving forever. Baby, do you wanna go for a ride in the consensual sex van? Do you wanna go for a ride in the consensual sex van? You don't have to be alone anymore. We will be together forever in love. Do you wanna go for a ride? Do you wanna go in my Let's go, 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 let's go. Just get in the van.
I just got a package, I can't wait to get home. I spent all day tracking the shipment on my phone, all that she was lacking. I ordered custom, I can't wait to get some. Take it to the bedroom, bitch is always nagging. Now I got the air, I said this bitch is packing, going my way. I have a new attraction, don't care what you say, it's better in every way. Now baby, it's time to play, we're gonna make us a tape and show everyone the way. Cause I'm going She's the new real dope, and it's time to play. She don't need expensive date nights, never talks back, I'm always right. Stuff it in her face with all my might. She don't even care, we don't ever fight. She never cries when I'm testing the suspension. We blow it up like it's fucking Armageddon. We make the videos because this is perfection. Look at this erection, I don't need protection, cause I'm going. She's the new real talk, and it's time to play. With my new real talk. She's my new real talk, and it's time to play.
The woman of my dreams.
Voulez-vous coucher avec moi?
Fais-moi l'amour.
Je suis amoureux.
Je pense toujours à
Enchanté,
tu es charmant.
ma chérie. Mon
Tu es
petit
charmant.
Easy to touch you a little nipple.
Tu es charmant. Fais-moi
It's like living on a super yacht, making love to a robot. It's like owning a football team, but having sex with a robot. It's like winning an Oscar and Emmy and Grammy when you're fucking a robot. It's like saving a family with a newborn from a fire, but you're fucking a robot. I'm gonna play just second range of silicone made. She is here to stay. She's the new real talk, and it's time to play.
Drop a can of drip, 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 drop a can of drip, drop a can of drip.
I got all the moves, got that molar too. You think it's wrong? I could've had too long. Fuck that. Check these molar moves. You need a molar too. I can do no wrong. Back of the head long, never gonna cut it.
All these hookers sweet on me. Look at them chasing me, showing me that ass. And I bang up snatch. I do this shit for free. Got down your mama till 3. She's taking selfies with the mullet like it's history. I can outmaneuver you with that pussy, dude. You feel like Buddha waiting on it to come to you. My lines are straight to the point. She shows me gratitude. So what's your latitude? Let's adjust your attitude. Alligator double dually Lamborghini, all up in a silly little yellow polka dot bikini.
I got molar moves, I got that molar too. You think it's wrong, back of the head too long, fuck that.
Alligator double dually Lamborghini, all up in a silly little yellow polka dot bikini.
Check these molar moves, you need a molar too. I can do no wrong, cut it.
Alligator double dually Lamborghini, all up in a silly little yellow polka dot bikini. You're like the butt of a butternut cutting up panini. So climb back in your kangaroo pouch like a rolling genie. These moves are hot, these locks I got. This power cannot be disputed and it can't be bought. So you can find me in the studio with all these thoughts. You wanna bite my style, but you can't be what you're not, neighbor.
I got molar moves, I got that molar too. You think it's wrong, back of the head too long, fuck that. Check these molar moves, you need a molar too. I can do no wrong, back of the head long, you're gonna cut it. Got that motherfucking molar head. You wanna touch it?
Yeah. Next time you come around here with your bitch ass, just remember how my mullet makes your hose pussy drip, drip, drip.
I got molar moves, I got that molar too. You think it's wrong, back of the head too long, fuck that. Check these molar moves, you need a molar too. I can do no wrong, never gonna cut it. I got molar moves, I got that molar too. You think it's wrong, back of the head too long, fuck that. Check these molar moves, you need a molar too. I can do no wrong, never gonna cut it. Never gonna cut it. Never gonna cut it.
Drip, drip,
Molar moves.
drip,
Bitch. Molar moves.
All up in a silly little yellow polka.
Never gonna cut it.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining me this evening on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. I hope you're keeping cool wherever you may be beyond the Omniverse, out there in the world today. It's been crazy. I feel bad for my friends in India and my friends on the East Coast. Like, there's so much flooding going on. I got sprinkled on, one little sprinkle on my arm earlier today, and I was like, yes, it's going to rain. And then it didn't. It was just one single drop. So yeah, Jay, I asked in the chat room, how hot is it in Arizona today? Now we look at my weather thing and see what it says. Weather. So here it feels hot enough. I just reluctantly had to turn my fan off. It's only 75 degrees. And it feels hot in here. Let me see if, okay, Cortez is 85, Bayfield 75. Let me look up Phoenix. Phoenix has been breaking records all over the place. Let me add this one. 110 degrees right now. Holy Nikes. That's freaking hot. Just a friendly reminder, don't leave any living thing in your car. Just recently here in Durango, somebody left their 2 dogs in the car and unfortunately they passed. But yeah, don't forget your kids. Don't forget your kids in the car. I remember once about, I think it was 8 or 9 years ago. I think it was 9 years ago. And we went shopping and came back home and I unloaded groceries. My husband generally got the boy because that's his boy. And yeah, I'm sitting there in my chair and I'm like, where's my boy at? Where's my boy? I went out to the truck and he had like partially escaped from his car seat, but that was scary. Luckily, it wasn't a hot day because who knows what could have happened. It's freaking scary. The heat is serious. If it's 97 degrees outside, It's about 130 degrees inside your car. It's insane. So yes, don't leave any living thing inside your vehicle. So our next chapter is spontaneous human combustion. Len Denny was a quiet man, but when neighbors didn't see him for several days, they began to worry. Finally, someone detected a strange smell coming from his Algiers, Louisiana house and called the police. Officers and firemen broke down the door and made a grisly discovery. Heaped between two chairs in the middle of the living room were the charred remains of the 46-year-old foundry worker. Flames so hot, firemen had to don protective clothing to smother the blaze, still engulfed the blackened corpse. Nothing else in the room was damaged by smoke or fire, except for the smell, the only physical sign of the conflagration was the body. An investigation was launched to determine the cause of death. If it was suicide, as some authorities initially suspected, the victim must have used a lot of kerosene or gasoline to create such an intense fire. But no drop of combustible fuel was found in the house, not even a match, a lighter, or a cigarette. It appeared that Denny had simply died, struck down by a fire from heaven, in the words of one writer. That was in 1951. See, and I thought the whole Star Wars thing and laser thing started when Reagan was in office, but I suppose not. Because 1951, that was quite a while before Reagan was in office. I believe he was in the 80s. But for centuries, scientists have been intrigued by the curious phenomenon known as spontaneous human combustion, or SHC. The ability of the human body to catch fire for no apparent reason. Hundreds of such cases have been reported, most of them still unsolved. Some victims were simply sitting in chairs or lying in bed. Others were walking down the street or riding in cars. An English woman caught fire and burned alive while dancing at a nightclub. What the crack? Well, I guess she really turned it up and caught those shorts on fire. One of the most spectacular cases occurred on July 2nd, 1951, when Mary Hardy Reeser, a 67-year-old widow, was visiting her son in St. Petersburg, Florida. Dr. Wilton M. Krogman, a physical anthropologist and expert on the effects of fire on the human body, called the Reeser case the most amazing thing I've ever seen, where I, living in the middle of ages, I'd mutter something about black magic. The ordeal began when a neighbor summoned police to investigate smoke coming from beneath the door of Mrs. Reeser's apartment. When officers entered, they found smoke but no signs of fire, except for the remains of a burned chair in the corner. Let me check my sound really quick, because that music sounds kind of loud. Well, I'm a little louder than that, but let's turn it down just a smidge more. This one is called The Creeper. I love these songs that I found, but let's turn it down a little bit more. This one's a bit louder than the last song we used, which was This House. All right, let's see. Within the blackened area, roughly 4 feet in diameter, they also found the remains of a human body. A charred liver attached to a piece of spine, a shrunken skull, 1 foot wearing a black satin slipper, and a small pile of ashes. The slipper belonged to Mrs. Reeser, as did apparently the foot protruding from the pile of ashes. The FBI was called in to investigate. It was determined that it would have taken an enormous white-hot fire, at least 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, the same temperature range used by modern crematoriums, to have incinerated Mrs. Reeser's body so thoroughly. And I was just watching earlier, about how different technologies have been taken from us. So I know, as far as Tesla goes, um, he has so much stuff that he had to share. He had an awesome light bulb, free energy, etc. He even talked about the internet, cell phones, time travel, so many different things. Pretty sure time travel does exist. I've seen certain pictures. But yeah, even vehicles. Back when Henry Ford made vehicles, you see a whole garage full of vehicles plugged into electricity because they're electric vehicles. They had electric scooters, TVs where you could talk to your grandson or whatnot. Like, pretty intriguing how we had that technology before, then it was lost or, scattered over or buried by certain people that don't want us to have it. We're talking about solar panels or electric cars, all these things. You have to have coal. You have to have something to create that energy. And we're going in the wrong direction. If everybody would just quit being so shady and into making money, we can have free electricity. There's a whole neighborhood right outside of Rico, Colorado, where Tesla energy is used for that one neighborhood. And I also heard that there's a place in Colorado Springs. I haven't witnessed it myself. I did witness the one that was right outside of Rico, but that was pretty interesting. All right, so what could have caused so hot a fire in such a confined space? Why didn't the fire spread? Why wasn't any other furniture in the room at least scorched from the heat? Theories were advanced, ranging from lightning to falling asleep while smoking. Murder and suicide also speculated, but no answer seemed satisfactory. Mrs. Reeser's bizarre death was simply baffling. How could a human body be so thoroughly incinerated, yet one portion, foot, remain untouched? How does that happen? This is a mystery we'll never know the answer to, Dr. Krogman concluded. Some scientists believe that under the right circumstances, gases inside a person's body can ignite. Several books have touched on this particular phenomenon, including Mark Twain's Life on the Mississippi and Charles Dickens' Bleak House. Dozens of TV shows and movies have featured it as well. While most medical scientists stop short of accepting SHC as a real condition, Larry Arnold, director of Parascience International, and a few like-minded investigators suspect there may be something to the phenomenon. It's possible, they say, that some unknown agent inside the body, a gas perhaps, might be responsible for triggering these internal infernos. I also heard the fat layer on your body is very flammable, and that could be it. But yeah, you're sitting there, you're napping in your chair, and all of a sudden, kaboosh, there you go. Or, you're in between two chairs and turning off the lamp to go to bed, and kaboosh. There's been several different cases of this. Arnold said the body's electrical systems appear to go haywire, sometimes resulting in internal fires that barely singe the skin or any other object around the room. Sometimes these internal fires can explode or become so intense the victim is actually cremated, leaving the body in a pile of ashes. Researchers have found references to this phenomenon in the Bible, as well as medieval records. It wasn't until the 17th century, however, that compelling cases of SHC began to appear in the medical records. One of the earliest cases recorded in 1673 involved a woman who caught fire on a Paris street and exploded in full view of witnesses. Some observers said she had been drinking. Common link to many cases, leading some investigators to theorize that alcohol might play a role in SHC. Static electricity has also been mentioned as a cause. Some people have been known to generate up to 30,000 volts, which is ordinarily discharged through the hair. In certain circumstances, however, these highly charged individuals have been known to spark explosions, especially when working around combustible materials. A number of other physical causes have been suggested, including fireballs, lightning, internal atomic explosions, laser beams, microwave radiation, high-frequency sound, and geomagnetic flux. Solving the mystery of fire from heaven has become a quest for many researchers, but might take a lot longer than they'd like. The Restless Skies. On February 11th, 1859, John Lewis was strolling across his field near Mountain Ash in the valley of Ardere, Wales, when thousands of fish started raining from the skies. One slipped down the neck of his shirt. Several got caught in his hat brim. The fall went on for about 2 minutes, then stopped. 10 minutes later, it started again, this time lasting a full 5 minutes. Incredibly, in full view of Mr. Lewis, his wife, and several neighbors, the fish were not only fresh, they were very lively, so they're like flipping around. Samples were sent to British Museum for examination, where authorities determined that there were 2 types of minnows and sticklebacks. Later, the surviving fish were exhibited at the Zoological Garden and Regent's Park, perhaps the only famous minnows in history. Scientists at the British Museum were inclined to dismiss the mountain ash incident as some sort of joke. They suggested that someone had thrown a bucket full of fish over Mr. Lewis with or without his knowledge. I don't think so. It's hot, hot, hot in Phoenix, says Jason. Yeah, I looked up the temperature. 110 degrees right now, it says. Holy shnikes. The Wells fish fall was... Okay, wait a minute. To his dying day, Mr. Lewis insisted that the fish had fallen on him from the sky. Friends and relatives who witnessed the sky fall supported Mr. Lewis's bizarre claim, saying he was a God-fearing gentleman and capable of distorting the truth. The Wells fish fall was similar to thousands of others reported around the world. The March 1972 issue of Australian Natural History lists 54 separate falls of fish and a few frogs, according to Australia, between 1879 and 1971. According to the Australian Museum magazine, hundreds of little fish called gudgeons were found in the streets after a rain. At Glargambone, New South Wales. I hope I pronounced that right, I'm not sure. The 20th century brought fresh reports of strange skyfalls. In June 1901, hundreds of small catfish, trout, and perch suddenly rained down on a cotton field belonging to Charles Raleigh of South Carolina. On October 23, 1947, the town of Marksville, Louisiana, was deluged by fish. Largemouth bass, sunfish, hickory shad, and minnows. The fish were described as absolutely fresh and fit for human consumption, according to a local newspaper. The town threw a big fish fry that lasted all week. Perhaps more bizarre than fish falls are snake falls. My husband would love that, because he loves snakes. Just kidding, he hates them. Occasionally, those have been reported. One such snake fall is said to have occurred in a small Alabama town in 1925. There, thousands of squirming reptiles suddenly dropped from the sky into the streets, causing mass panic. Could you imagine? That'd be insane. Another incident involving snakes occurred one hot Sunday afternoon in 1887 in Memphis, Tennessee. Many citizens just out of church services reported being inundated with thousands of rattlesnakes and copperheads that fell from the sky. Holy shnikes. It's safer to stay at home. Don't go to church. Just kidding. I have to go tomorrow. I gotta take the littles. Get the devil out of them. I'm hoping once they come back, they can feel the difference, as I have with what Travis did. Thank you, Travis, so much. So grateful. Eternally grateful. Pedestrians watched in horror as the wriggling masses of venomous serpents slithered away in all directions. Some stayed where they landed, coiled and hissing. One bewildered rider jumped from his horse after a snake draped around the animal's neck. Ooh, no one was bitten or seriously hurt, so calm down. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay, I promise. Smelly fish and squirming snakes falling mysteriously from the sky. What exactly is going on? What the crack is happening? Since ancient times, there have been reports of strange objects falling mysteriously from the heavens, ranging from small creatures and food to more dangerous objects like stones and warped bricks. The Old Testament tells how hot stones rained down on Amorite warriors. In the 6th century, fallen stones destroyed an Abyssinian, yep, that's right, army laying siege to Mecca. Skyfalls consisting of fiery globs of oil, lumps of flaming sulfur, and other burning objects have been reported from India to South America. Sometimes it's ice and mounds of jelly. A foul-smelling substance, the consistency of butter, supposedly fell over large areas of southern Ireland in the winter and spring of 1696. A fibrous substance resembling blue silk fell in great quantities in Nuremberg, Germany, on March 23, 1665. In 1961, construction workers in Shreveport, Louisiana, were deluged with green peaches. They ain't even ripe. So a lot of this stuff, like, I've heard, like, tornadoes or dust devils or something can pick them up, or even water spouts, and then drop them in other areas, so I'm not sure. Investigators credited the oddity with a crate of produce that somehow fell from an airplane. Yeah, it was just that airplane flying by, and the door came open, and all these green peaches fell out. Who would pick green peaches? Give me a break. Why do they come up with this stuff? But when objects fall out of a clear sky with no wind or aircraft around, people begin to wonder. The Memphis snake fall, for example, was attributed to a whirlwind that supposedly had swept through a nearby swamp. No one bothered to explain how or why such a whirlwind bothered to pick up only snakes, and poisonous ones at that, and not rabbits, squirrels, turtles, or other small creatures. Like, why the heck is this happening? Others theorize that earthquake activity might have something to do with this strange phenomenon, but so far, no one has been able to explain how. How can an earthquake cause things to go in the sky and then drop on your little tiny pointed head? I don't know. It's hard to say. This chapter is called Toward the Light. The old woman was dying. She lay quietly in her deathbed, surrounded by grieving friends and family members, trying to ignore the pain of the cancerous tumor eating at her emaciated body. Suddenly she sat up and stared at the foot of the bed. "Mama?" she cried. "Is that you?" Those in attendance looked around and saw no one. They don't know who she's talking to. But when they tried to comfort the dying woman, she said, "She's right there, Mama, so white and bright and full of radiant glory." The old woman described the dazzling white light that flooded the room, music that came to her from far away, beautiful gardens beyond the light, and a wondrous feeling of joy that came over when she saw her mother, who had been dead for more than 4 decades. Then she lay back and died, a peaceful smile on her face. Each year, thousands of people the world over experience similar deathbed visions. These visions usually include passing through a dark tunnel into a bright light, the sensation of floating out of one's body, a warped sense of time and space, and a reluctance to return to this earthly place. Such experiences are usually attributed to drugs, fever, disease, induced hallucinations, oxygen deprivation to the brain, or wish fulfillment. Specialists have studied the phenomenon of NDE, near-death experiences. They maintain that medical factors do not necessarily generate true deathbed experiences. According to some researchers, such visions are sometimes shared by those near the dying person. As the person dies, says Rosemary Ellen Goyley, an author and journalist who has studied the subject, clouds of silvery energy are sometimes reported floating over the body. In some cases, the energy is seen to clearly form into the astral body of the dying one, connected by a silvery cord, which severs at the moment of death. I remember when my Uncle Daddy Bill, he was dying, and he had very dark brown eyes, just like my dad. I remember looking in his eyes, and I'm like, Uncle Bill, there's clouds floating in your eyes. And he's like, what? I'm like, can you see good? Like, is this something as far as like, excuse me, you're close to death, and so your eyes are clouding over, or what? And he's like, no, I can see just fine. And then he looked again at me, and he's like, can you look again and tell me what you see? And I swear to God, it was like heaven in his eyes. The clouds were floating in his eyes. It was pretty intense, pretty interesting. I will never forget that. Studies show that deathbed visions are found in all cultures throughout history. They typically occur to individuals who die gradually, such as from terminal illness, rather than those who die suddenly from heart attacks, car crashes, or other traumatic deaths. The majority of visions are of apparitions of the dead, usually described as glowing and dressed in white. Oh my God, okay, so I was going to share this before, but I have to share it now. My mentor Kat, aka Denise Hess, she had cancer, which I think originated like in her colon, then went to her liver, then spread to her lungs, and then to her brain. And she did everything she could to get rid of it. She wasn't afraid to die. She was just afraid not to be there when her daughter got married to give her away or whatnot. But I was there. My daughters were there. Kenzie took off early, but Nova stayed with me. I was like, Nova, you can go home. You can go home with Kenzie. And she's like, no, I want to stay. And Kat died, and you hear that death rattle in their lungs as they're breathing, and she had a rose quartz on her chest, and she went out pretty well, and then we had to change her clothes and stuff, put her into her white outfit, which I loved because it was a white shirt, and then she had white shorts on, and they're kind of like those knee-high ones. I don't know if those are called capris. I think capris go like above your ankle, but knee-high shorts with bling blings on her butt. I'm like, oh yeah, she's looking for a man on the other side. So she's a single independent woman, but she showed up that night. I shit you not. And Nova comes in. She's like, Mom, I can't sleep. Kat won't let me sleep. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, Kat, she's here. And she showed up next to my bed or next to the couch. And then she walked over to the window and she's staring out the window. Can I sleep with you? And I'm like, sure, you can sleep with me. And then we all went back to sleep. And all of a sudden, like, I woke up and I sat up and my eyes were still closed so I could just see, like, you know, when the light's on, you could see the light through your eyelids. I saw the light through my eyelids. And I looked the direction of where the light was coming from. And who's there? It's Kat. And not only is she beautiful and radiant, and she has this white and silver and like electric blue sort of aura around her. Her hair had grown back. She had a braid along the side of her head. And instead of wearing the clothes we dressed her in, she was wearing this beautiful white gown. It was like, reminds me of like when you see fairies or maidens or whatever on certain cards, and they're wearing these white dresses. It was a long flowing white dress. So she wasn't wearing what we had put her in that she wanted to be buried in, but she was wearing a beautiful white dress, and she just sat there and smiled. She didn't say anything. And I knew she wasn't there for me. I'm so grateful I saw her, but she was there for Nova. Like, she was checking on Nova and making sure she's okay, because witnessing a death is very traumatic. I'm used to it because I've dealt with that most of my life. Sometimes I feel like I'm an angel of death because those that I love and care about around me die, but I'm so grateful I saw her. And it was amazing because a lot of people don't come back like that. They'll come back through dreams or whatnot, but Kat came back in person, like full-fledged in person, with this amazing aura. It reminded me of like one of those candles that you buy that has like Jesus or the Mother Mary or something on there, and you see this golden aura around them. But hers was pure white, silver, and electric blue. It was the most beautiful thing. She was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I will never forget that. I think that's the second time I said that tonight, but in years. Sometimes mythical and religious beings are perceived, including angels, Jesus, the Virgin Mary, Krishna, Yama, who is a Hindu god of death, or similar figures. Apparitions invariably are close family members, such as parents, children, siblings, or spouses. One report suggested that the purpose of these apparitions is to beckon or command the dying to accompany them, to assist in the transition to death. Descriptions most frequently given including gardens of great beauty, golden gates, bridges, rivers, boats, and other symbols of transition. Other visions include tunnels of light, sweet music, and white-robed angels or messengers that guide them along their journey. One man recalled meeting a being of light who forgave him for a lifetime of violence. Another survivor said she traveled down a long tunnel to a place filled with love and a beautiful, bright white light, where Elvis Presley took her gently by the hand. Let me take you to Heartbreak Hotel in my blue suede shoes. Some scientists who study these near-death experiences theorize they may be peepholes into a world beyond Bruce Grayson. A psychiatrist at the University of Virginia Medical School says that those who have such experiences become enamored with the spiritual part of life, and less so with possessions, power, and prestige. Nancy Evans, president emeritus of the International Society for Near-Death Experiences, said, most near-death experience survivors say they don't think there is a God. They know. There's a higher power, though. We do have a creator. Is it aliens? Is it a spiritual being? I don't know. I just saw this thing recently. Sorry to interrupt the story again, but where these cosmonauts are in space, or maybe within the fold of space, like at the highest place, because a lot of people believe we've never gone to space. But they're out there floating in space, and all of a sudden they see this glowing golden light, and it was angels. And they took pictures of them, and it kind of reminded me of the movie, what was it called? Where they go to the ocean, and there's these alien beings with like flappy butterfly wings, could be stingray wings, but holy crap, I almost remembered it. Now I can't. It reminds me of that. Such revelatory experiences are nothing new. Writing in the Republic, Plato told the story of how a wounded soldier journeyed toward a straight, light-like pillar, most nearly resembling a rainbow, but brighter and purer. Art and literature of the Middle Ages is replete with the borderland between life and death. One 13th century monk recounted tales of people who supposedly returned from the edge and reported corridors of fire and icy paths to the afterlife. P.M.H. Atwater, author Coming Back to Life, The After Effects of the Near-Death Experience, insists that NDEs, aka near-death experiences, occur particularly all the time. The spin showed that 40% of all resuscitated patients have near-death experiences, said Mrs. Atwater, or Miss Atwater. Excuse me, sorry. Miss, not Mrs. A Charlottesville, Virginia writer who claims to be an NDE survivor herself. Even though skeptics link such experiences to natural causes, hallucinations, sleep deprivation, etc., the medical community's perception of these reports began to change in 1975, when Raymond Moody published Life After Life, a book that coined the term near-death experience to describe this phenomenon. If NDEs are so common, then why isn't more known about them? And why don't more survivors come forth to talk about them? Oh, shit. So I'm just looking. So this was printed and published in 2000. And then this edition that I have was republished in 2006. So how far away is that? That's about 13. Wait. No, it's not. Anyways, I'm not going to do math. Old-fashioned fear of ridicule noted survival Bob Smith of Austin, Texas. That plus the fact that most NDEs occur in hospital environments, where medication somehow prevents most patients from remembering what happened to them. So it's pretty intriguing. I've even heard of people that have passed and, they float up and this individual went back to the corner and they're right above this file cabinet or where they store all the medical tubes and needles and stuff like that. Just watching their own body, watching the doctors work on them, hearing everything they say, and then coming back to their body and reporting back to the physicians what exactly was said. It's pretty intriguing. Dance of the Doppelganger. During World War II, a young infantry sergeant named Alex Griffith was leading a patrol through enemy territory in France when a strange feeling came over him, warning him to turn back. It's that still small voice that talks to you. A battle-hardened veteran, Griffith fought off the sensation and continued until he came upon an eerie sight. Less than 20 yards ahead, another American soldier stepped out of nowhere, waving for him to retreat. No words came from the soldier's mouth, though Griffith seemed to understand exactly what he was saying. Turn back, go back the way you came. Oddest thing about this soldier, however, was that he looked exactly like Griffith, down to his sergeant's rank. The same beard growth, dirty uniform, even the same band-aid covering a small cut on his face. Instinctively, Griffith turned and ordered his men off the road. When he looked again, his mirror image was gone. A few seconds later, an American Jeep came roaring past him, heading straight up the road. Momentarily, he heard machine gun fire, followed by an explosion. The Jeep had driven into a German ambush. Had Griffith not ordered his men to turn back, they would have walked directly into the trap and been slaughtered. None of the men in his patrol had seen the mysterious soldier. Only he did. 20 years later, while on vacation in Canada, Griffith and his wife and 2 children were hiking down a rugged mountain trail when a storm blew up. situation grew steadily more dangerous as lightning popped and cracked around them and huge branches and debris whipped through the air. Then Griffith saw a strange sight. A man dressed in World War II combat uniform. The soldier was identical to the one that he had seen 20 years earlier in war-torn France. The same soldier who had warned him to turn back. Pretty cool, to say so myself. As before, Griffith responded by turning around and heading his family in a different direction. Several seconds later, he heard a loud crackling noise, followed by what sounded like a tremendous explosion. The strong wind had apparently been too much for a massive old tree that toppled over the spot where Griffith and his family would have been standing had they continued their journey up the trail. As before, no one had seen the silent soldier but Griffith. Who was the mysterious uniformed stranger who twice had saved Alex Griffith's life? Years later, Griffith became convinced that what he had seen was a doppelganger, the spirit that is the exact double of the person who sees it. Tradition holds that a doppelganger, a German word that means double spirit or double walker, usually appears to warn of impending danger. The phenomenon is generally described as a malicious shadow self that accompanies every human. Although flesh and blood, not semi-transparent in form like a ghost, the doppelganger is invisible to everyone except the owner. Very often, it appears as a pale, bloodless version of yourself, almost like looking at yourself as a corpse. That's kind of a gross description. This is said by Douglas Culligan, an author who spent 2 decades researching doppelgangers. No one knows how or when doppelganger stories got started, but the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans told of shadow creatures that stalked their human counterparts. During the Middle Ages, it was commonly believed that to see one's doppelganger meant death or disaster. Animals, especially cats, were said to have the power to perceive these invisible phantoms. Bum, bum, bum. I keep wiping my face because of the sweat, and I'm getting makeup all over this book. But the next chapter is, If This Is Dying, It Ain't So Bad. And we'll continue that probably not next week, but the week after, because next week there's several videos that I've sent myself that are pretty profound, and I want to do that on Storytime after the Paradox Paranormal Forum. That's going to be awesome. Tomorrow night, you guys got to tune in. We got Stephen B. Umani. It's going to be amazing. We're going to be talking about the mysterious death of Lisa Marie Presley, as well as Skinwalker Ranch and other things. Perhaps even his book on Tesla that he's still working on. I'm so excited for that to come out. That's going to be amazing. But on this break, we have, again, Mr. Jeff Hilliard from the Los Angeles area with Abandoned. This, if you haven't seen the video, you got to look it up on YouTube. Jeff Hilliard, and it kind of reminds me of like late 80s, early 90s. It's pretty awesome. And we have Miss Mia Savage with her band Antidote for Savages with Your Skeleton, Not a Phase, The Bottom Line, and The Mirroring Crypto. She's a snowbird, so she's here sometimes, but she's down in Phoenix trying to get her pilot's license. So proud of my girl. But I miss my bestie. Come back. Come back. We gotta go ghost hunting. There's nobody else out there that wants to do that with me. But yeah, you guys enjoy, and I'll see you back after this music break.
Left here alone, just a shadow of my erection on the wall. Why won't you answer my calls? I gave you my all with the love we made together. just don't know what went wrong. I rolled the dice, 'cause I thought I saw forever in your eyes. Was all that passion a lie? Just another fool you seduced and left behind. Heartless and cruel, you probably do this all the time, baby. I ain't no puppet doll. I believe in the power of love. One night is not enough. How could you abandon our love? How could you abandon our love? Drove by your house again today. Peeked in the window and I saw you smiling. Met your husband and your beautiful family. Tell me, does he know about the way we made love on the night you met me? At Johnny's Tavern at 11:37 last Thursday. You said hello. Are you my Uber driver, baby? I said yeah. Then you asked if I wanted to party. I got an 8-ball from my friend Noel. We trauma bonded in a cheap motel. We laughed, we cried, we came multiple times. The sex blew my mind. I ain't no puppet doll. I believe in the power of love. One night is not enough. How could you abandon our love? You left me high and dry. You didn't even say goodbye. Now I screamed into the night. How could you abandon something that's so right? The way you touch me, the way you love me. Oh, how could you abandon your love? Won't be fooled again by your skeleton. Won't be fooled again. Never wanted to say it. Never wanted to show me. It's another face and I can see it, but I'm never letting you know. Won't be fooled again by your skeleton. Won't be fooled It's not again that I'm bursting. It's not about what I've done. I don't wanna fade it anymore, but I handle it like nobody else. Won't be fooled again by your skeleton. I won't be fooled again. me help you understand. Heaven knows I care. Leave me here for days. I don't know where. My love is not a face. This love is not a face. Heaven knows I care. Leave me here for days. I won't go nowhere. My love is not a face. This love is not a face. Angel on my shoulder. Devil in my bed. Forget my behavior. Didn't mean what I said. Bottom line is without you, I'm torn and
It's a ride. We'll kill those big guys and try to tell us that they're let the demons run around. But it doesn't matter, because it's just a ride, and we can change it in round one. It's all political choice. No record, no work, no job, no savings or nothing. Just a choice right now between fear and love. Just a choice right now between fear and love.
to your leader or leave me alone. Somebody please take me out. Rest of time. Here, you speak my language, not if you know. Can you read my crypto? Take me to your leader or leave me alone. Somebody please take me out. There is no time. There's no time. There's no time. Do you speak my language? Not if you know. Can you read my crypto? Take me to your leader or leave me alone. Somebody please take me home. Do you speak my language? Not if you know. Can you read my crypto? Take me to your leader or leave me alone. Somebody please take me out. Rest no time. There is no time. Here.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us this evening on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. Hello to Mr. Number One, whoever might be out there listening right now. I think it's Jay, but I'm not sure. Why don't people like story time? I don't know. But leaving off on how we did the last story, we're now in Reddit Ghost Stories. And at the very top of that, I did find where, let me check my sound really quick, just to make sure it's okay. Looks good to me. How have you almost died? I'm kind of wondering, here, let me invite, copy, and put this in here. If anybody's got any stories they'd like to share as far as how they almost died, feel free. Hold on, I'm typing this in. Yep. Paste. Snap. Show. So if you want to share your near-death experience, feel free to call in and let us know what happened. So this person is U/Sadie Page 11. Taston said lymphoma. I just thought it was my turn to be skinny. Yep. Same. 2 times, 9 years apart. Just had my stem cell transplant in June. But things said 9 years apart? That's my nightmare. I'm sitting right. Sorry, I just got glue in my mouth. I just started. Okay, so I'm right at 5 and just started to feel like I can put it behind me. So this person is at 5 years coming out of having cancer. I know, the 5-year mark, I thought I was for sure in the clear. For most people, though, you are cured. Past then, I hope so. I was in remission going into the auto cell or stem cell transplant unit, and I'll have a scan in September to confirm. I still am. Thank you. I'm happy for you as well, fellow survivor. Farmer Fadist said, it's a great way to lose a few pounds before the show. Brilliant Power 5879 said, yo, grade A dark humor. Have an award. Thai 3 Kings said, stage 4 cancer at age 30. They had to cut the whole bunch of bits out of me. And 3 months of chemo, but cancer-free, 13 years and counting. Space Mom Lawn to Lawn said, that's amazing. I'm happy you're still here. Mimo 1000 said, so I was a kid sunbathing in my yard. My mom's room window was on the second floor right above me. My little sister was playing around in her room, and for some reason, I decided I was done sunbathing. The second I got up and walked away from my spot, the in-window air conditioner unit landed on the ground right where my head was. Educational-Dirt 4059 said, this is how Chitty died, on the good place. Good thing they weren't indecisive and got up. Holy forking shit. Shirt balls. That reminds me of that show, what was it, Big Daddy or something like that? Hold on a minute. Am I still coming through over here? Look. Okay, so remember Adam Sandler? I think it was Happy Gilmore, or it could have been Big Daddy or something, where he'd go to this certain place and visit. Oh, it was Happy Gilmore. He'd go and visit his grandma, and he was leaving, and somebody's AC unit fell out of the window onto this lady, and she's like, Mista, get this thing off of me. That to me was funny, but yeah, Slithery Liftneck said, Meester, get this off of me, Meester. I think I just killed the Meester lady. Ah! The number of times I've barely not been crushed by falling things by pure circumstances makes me question reality sometimes. Not in a serious way, but in a I'm watching you reality right away. WVUJD said, due to a broken bone, I was prescribed morphine. I took it as prescribed, and one afternoon, I took my pill and laid down to take a nap. Morphine caused me to sleep very deeply, and I aspirated in my sleep. I stopped breathing. Thankfully, my sister happened to just stop by to check on me that afternoon. She found me not breathing and unresponsive. Called 911, performed CPR, and mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. I woke up hours later in the ICU with some chest pain, and I was very groggy. I was very confused when I woke up. Just thought it was a dream. Thanks, sis, for saving my life. Thank God she came by to check on you. Holy shnikes. Best sister ever award goes to her. K1ND, but not soft, said, holy shit, that's insane and scary. I always have had a fear of this whenever taking anything and going to sleep, but there's nothing you can quite do about it. I've actually aspirated a couple times in my sleep, but luckily, I jet up and I'm good. Okay, so I was just seeing in the response units, in the comments, nobody's commenting. Where is everybody? Johnny, can you hear me? Thank you, number one, Jay, or whoever may be listening right now. Bored, sleepy, head. But head is spelled HE4D. Cutting wood and the saw blade got loose, flew under my armpit. A Kikit said, holy shit, I had a grinder blade before and pierced my visor. An entire blade coming loose sounds terrifying. I wasn't in danger, but had the scared out of me by the CNC lathe tucking an aluminum chess piece at the doors. These are people that almost died. Oh. This is Floyd, if anybody's wondering. Mr. Numero uno. Yes, that's what I meant to say. Mike BMXer said, kayak capsized in the ocean and dumbass me didn't have a life jacket. Tide was going out, tread water for 3 hours, and by some miracle, a random jet skier found me. Walmart Gaga said, you're very lucky. A guy I went to school with went missing after going kayaking during a storm without a life jacket, and they found his body washed up on a shore of Lake Michigan about 10 days later. They say like Lake Michigan and those bigger lakes are kind of like the ocean because they're so huge. They have weird waves. Head-Progress 6236 said, how do you tread for 3 hours? I can barely do it for 5 minutes. Laugh out loud. Try being chunky. I could tread water for hours if I had with me my natural buoyancy. Flotation devices. I skirt. Dr_Robert_Neville said, 3 of top 7 comments involve water, so does mine. Hiking to a waterfall, I hike up to the top of it. Think it'll be a cool picture if I walk halfway across the waterfall and a friend gets my picture from down below. You okay, boy?
Yeah. Just my shoulders hit the door now.
Have you been drinking?
No.
Here, breathe into this.
Okay.
I get halfway across, slip and fall. Even though the water was only 10 inches deep, the bottom of the river was hard and smooth. That was unbelievably slippery, and being pushed by 8 to 10 inches of water while my hands and knees slowly towards the edge of the 50-foot falls down the sharp rocks. Somehow, I managed to get a grip on the tiniest crack of rock with a few fingers. Luckily, the crack went all the way to the edge of the river, where my brother was reaching out his hand. I seriously was almost pushed off a slow-moving waterfall with 8 to 10 inches of water. Slippery rock is no joke. Slip Pause with 2 W's says, MRSA infection, so MRSA infection. Had a fever and night sweats for weeks before doctors found what was wrong. Took 3 months to recover, adding, wow. MRSA seems like an extremely common illness. There ought to be more PSAs on the subject. Going to the hospital, visiting your friends, going to appointments, like, you can get MRSA and get a blood infection. Our friend Brother Bear did. Toot, toot, toot. I smell something sour. Anyways, yeah, he got MRSA.
Kind of.
Yeah, all of a sudden, weird.
It smells like sour spray, like sour candy spray.
You were eating that earlier, so maybe each out of your butt. What?
I did not fart.
That would be sunny.
Messing with my eye.
But yeah, Bear had that. He had MRSA, and then he had Bell's palsy, where part of your face gets paralyzed. Very bad. Allergic reaction to a peach. Can you imagine? An ass like that could kill you. Finally, someone else allergic to peaches. I am too, as well as 2 other stone fruit. Summer is miserable as I can't have so many delicious fruits. Guy, that's just okay, said, I was crushed and suffocated in a conveyor belt work accident. Some have said my heart did stop momentarily. 17 days in the hospital and 13 surgeries so far from one faithful day. Being asked a lot, so here's what happened. So let's preface by saying there was no lockout tag out policy. Great paying job that I was 3 weeks into, so I didn't speak out. I was invested in the union, yet so I was worried they'd can me and the union couldn't stop it. The system was supposed to be down from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. for maintenance. My job was to feed the system with demolition debris from my excavator. I was bored and had nothing else to do, so at 10 a.m. I decided to do a bit of maintenance on a bit of the conveyor that I was responsible for. I was supposed to have an hour to do a 10-minute job. Well, a temp employee didn't know better and didn't make sure. Oh, you're sitting on my hair. Right.
You had an employee and a temp employee.
I know. Didn't make sure.
Didn't know better and
Didn't make sure everyone was in the proper position when he was given the word. He started the system up with me lying on it. I fell down the next conveyor and my body was caught between two with the conveyor I was on, hitting me in the head. Yay, hard hats! I couldn't get out the way my arm was pinned behind me, so I had to snap my humerus to get out, which also tore my shoulder to shreds. Once I did get out, I started to go up the conveyor and got caught under what is called a tension bar, which is like 3 inches high above the belt. When I got sucked under that, I heard my back and ribs crack like bubble wrap. Conveyor system then shut down, but I couldn't get out from under the bar, and every breath I took, it got tighter and tighter until I knew I was going to die. Last thing I remember thinking was, this will be a bad phone call to my mom and dad before I passed out and accepted dying. I have no idea how long I was under that bar, but I woke up to a friend, coworker, slapping me in the face. That's how they do it in Hollywood. They're like, "Wake up, Floyd! Floyd, wake up! You gotta come back to life!" Maybe pure luck. He was a volunteer firefighter. I looked around and said, "Okay, let's get back to work." My boss simply said, "Nah, man, you're pretty fucked up." I remember flirting with one gal in the ambulance and scoring a date with her, jokingly, for later that night. Then it was just mayhem and confusion. Once I got to the hospital, I don't remember much until later that night. So yeah, they probably gave him fentanyl to get rid of the pain and was like, "Here you go. Howdy doody." I'm reading this one. People speak the F up if something is not right at your job, because it's your right to do so. And don't end up like me, regardless of if it's a well-paying job. I'm still dealing with the effects 7.2 years later and still having shoulder surgeries after 3.5 years. Or 3 to 5 years to get rid of pain, not to mention the mental scars. So they're asking if he picked his username before or after this accident. Guys, that's just okay. That's a good question. I almost lost... What?
After.
Yeah. I almost lost my husband the same way. Crazy. My husband was caught in a conveyor belt at the asphalt plant where he was working. Both lungs collapsed, multiple broken bones, including scapula, collarbone, both eye sockets, multiple ribs, etc. He required full facial reconstructive surgery, including plates and mesh. Suffered damage to his right eye and a brachial plexus injury to his right arm, and that rendered it useless for 6+ months. Apparently, he was given a less than 5% chance of survival. As I was mailed a copy of the death investigation, the local police opened and subsequently closed the case. We are so fortunate he survived. Sorry, I'm melting over here.
I know, right?
We're so fortunate he survived. It's been 15 years and he is headed for another surgery on his shoulder soon. Unfortunately, in our state, you cannot sue your employer for work-related injuries. That's BS. That's ridiculous. Even if your employer was negligent, as his employer was found to be. The only exception is if the employer was found to be willfully negligent. Well, if there's something wrong and he's not fixing it, isn't that being willfully negligent? I would think so. I sincerely hope that you fared better than my husband in that regard. ETA, this happened in Alaska. There's absolutely no way to hold the employer accountable here. Believe me, I spoke with multiple lawyers and even petitioned the governor to listen to our case. My husband did get work comp income, and work comp covered the accident-related injuries. However, there's no provision in place to keep your existing insurance for your family. My husband was union with operating engineers, and they basically shrugged and said there was no provision to assist with that. He was given a total permanent disability rating for his arm, and that paid out $88. He was receiving no further payout, and his work comp case remains open. That's just ridiculous. My husband had the same thing happen with working at Rekla, and they were careless with gasoline and tanks and other things, and Vern's walking along on the snow, and then where the gas hit the snow, he made an ice patch and he slipped and fell and ripped his rotator cuff and had to have surgery for that. And so that was...
Didn't he also run over Uncle Dave before?
Yeah, that's Uncle Dave's own fault.
What happened?
Your Uncle Dave was drunk and high on cocaine, and tried to run behind excavator and got ran over. He just wasn't fast enough. Reckless_59. When I was little, I underestimated the strength of a wave pool at a hotel. I went to the deep end where the waves are first formed, and I was on a little pool donut. I was maybe 6 or 7. I remember I got turned around by accident and a wave hit me from behind, and I immediately sucked down into the water. I thought I was a good swimmer then, but was so wrong. Had it not been for my dad watching me, I probably would have drowned, as the lifeguard didn't even notice me get swept underneath.
You probably got his job from...
Yeah, and I saw a story about that the other day where they're in a pool and this kid was swimming, and then he accidentally went too deep and he wasn't that great of a swimmer. He was floating there waiting for somebody to save him. And this one kid was watching, and he dove down and rescued him, and he and his brother pulled him up, and then the mother did CPR and he came back. And he said it was like the weirdest feeling, like it was scary, but at the same time, like really peaceful. I don't know, kind of weird. Not_A_werecat, WERE cat. Got thrown by a horse directly into a barbed wire fence. Had I landed on my head or the wire caught my neck, I'd be toast. Thankfully, my legs went into the wire and I walked away with the wind knocked out of me and 3 pretty impressive lacerations on my legs. Still have the scars 25 years later. A real honey badger, 1290, said, working...
Without spaces.
Yeah, no spaces there.
Just adding a little bit of detail like you did with the underscore stuff.
Yeah, thanks, boy. Working in a still cutting samples off the end of the mill line while the line was running standard operating procedures. Each bar coming off the line is around 240 feet long. Red hot makes for easier cutting with a torch cutter and exits at several miles per hour. The slide brake to slow down the exiting bars didn't rearrange after the bar I was about to cut stopped. I noticed it almost too late and jumped back as quickly as I could. As soon as I did, the next car came flying down the mill line, and with no functioning slide brake, launching itself out of the line to where I was originally standing. It came so close to hitting me that it melted soon of the button on my shirt.
Not
What?
soon, some.
Some of the buttons on my shirt. No surviving a hit like that. Your grandma Marlene, before she was killed by a drunk driver, she used to work at what is it called? Baldwin pianos, or Baldwin pianos. And she used to pour the piano lines.
I got the tip of my extra thumbnail kind of like chipped off.
Mm-hmm.
So what was...
So a really good friend of mine was in a Buffalo. Was in a Buffalo. What the crack? I had to reread it twice because I'm like, you were in a Buffalo? A really good friend of mine was in a Buffalo that rolled 6 times in Iraq from a daisy chain.
What does that mean?
He's still mentally fucked somewhat, but he's a good dude. He does his best. Can't imagine the sight of a buffalo rolling 6 times. Aren't those things basically built to resist explosives? So it must be some sort of vehicle. Yeah, that they drive and...
Or like a capsule like you get into stop explosives from killing you or something.
Well, yeah, you're driving to a certain place and there's landmines, and I guess that buffalo ran over landmine and that stuff happens. Mestria Fiamonte. Incompetent surgeon perforated my colon and put my insides back together wrong. New surgeon saved me, but I was 5.5 weeks in a coma. Nearly 2-year recovery, permanent damage, ongoing conditions. Glad to be alive, angry to have chronic pain, and U.S. drug laws are insane. Edit/date. Yes, we looked at a lawsuit. You know, things are real when the law firm pays their medical experts to review your records. The records did not match what my husband had been told while I was in the coma. Basically, gastric bypass, full incision, 2003, when I didn't wake up. First surgeon said I was medicated, then realized a problem and went poking around to try to find it. My husband asked caseworker, how do I fire this guy? Because he's incompetent, right? The case boiled down to they said, he said. Lawyers said yes, he had a case, but it wasn't a slam dunk. He could probably win, but we could lose. And if we lost, we could lose everything. House, savings, everything. This was while I still didn't know if I could ever recover. We had a 4-year-old son and my husband's 17-year-old daughter. We ultimately decided to let the universe handle it and concentrate our efforts on my recovery. We'd have had a better case if I died. I know the second surgeon had an effect on the first because the second was the head of surgery at the hospital. I don't know whether the first was ever fired or simply changed hospitals, though. I'm much better than we thought I would be. I can walk, eat normally, drive. I cried when I realized I could drive safely. I could go to the doctors by myself. I could get groceries. And putter in the garden. The new normal is reasonable. So when I'm at Walmart at Christmas and the lines are 20 people deep and every kid is screaming and I'm about to lose my... I tell myself, self, remember, this is what you prayed for. This is normal life. Be grateful.
That wasn't in the message.
Yeah, it was.
You added a few words.
Oh yeah, I said be grateful. Right?
And a few other
This
things.
isn't normal life. Or this is normal life. And I said be grateful. Because you should. Life is a gift. No matter how hard it is, you should be grateful for it. And sometimes it's hard to see unless, me and Dad, when Kinsey was just like 2 years old, got in a car accident. and Uncle Dave was in the back seat with Kinsey, and the car flipped, and Kinsey was out, and Uncle Dave was still sitting there trying to get her out of the car seat, and she wasn't even in there. So we had to save Uncle Dave from himself, because I don't know if he hit his head or what. My dad had a dog named Tyler, and he flew out the moonroof. So sunroofs have windows, moonroofs are completely open. Tyler flew out, and we landed right on top of him. But it was like from here to here that was in the moon roof. So his head got smashed, but, he was hard-headed anyways. And his butt, his stinky little Dalmatian butt. But he lived. He hid behind the couch.
The white and black one?
Tyler?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, he was a Dalmatian, and his spots touched. So they were going to kill him, and your dad's like, well, let me take him home. And they're like, well, you still have to pay for him. He's like, what? You're going to kill this dog, and you're going to make me pay for it? But, yeah, he did.
Yeah, Dad used to throw sticks, and, Dad used to throw sticks across an ice pool thing.
Oh, I think that was Badger.
Oh, yeah. And he would slide and go in circles. But one time, he went into, a hole in the ice, and Dad had an axe, and he was trying to
chop him out. He was like, why are you chopping?
Yeah, and the dog was just squirming away like, stop trying to hit me with an axe.
Yeah. Poor Badger. But no, poor Tyler, Vern didn't even notice, because I generally feed and water the animals. Your dad doesn't. He just does what he does. And I'm like, hey, have you seen
them sometimes? Sometimes.
Yeah. Hey, have you seen your dog in a while? No. I'm like, it's been 2 or 3 days. I haven't seen him. I just realized it. I felt kind of bad for that, but yeah, he'd gone on the back porch and curled up and died like that. But yeah, when you're talking about throwing a stick, it reminded me of they clean out the fridge and they'll give the dogs leftovers.
Pizza bones and stuff.
Yeah, well, there was a whole piece of pizza, and I'm like, here you go. I got this for you. And I threw it. I chunked it out in the yard, and he jumped up and he grabbed it. And he's like, woof. Because it was a hard piece of pizza. I should have warmed it up first, but it's kind of refrigerated. And yeah. He might have lost a couple teeth.
It works better as a frisbee.
Yeah, or boomerang. So one bad dog said, lived in Panama when I was a kid. We went to Devil's Beach, known for a hell of a riptide that had caused several deaths. It was scheduled and extremely scenic, and as long as you stayed in the lagoon area, it was pretty nice. Since then, I've always been scared of the riptide. Glad you're still with us. That's been happening a lot this year. Okay, so in Florida, it's really hot. It's so hot. The ocean is hot.
Stuff in Florida. Isn't there the box jellyfish and stuff?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And even the great whites are going up to Maine and stuff because the water's too hot. And they don't like it. But yeah, people are trying to keep cool and going out there. Yeah, people are dying from heat strokes, etc. because they go to the beach, it's really hot, they get in the water, they think they're going to get cool, but it's basically 4 degrees cooler than it is outside. So it's almost 100 degrees and it's 90-something degrees in the water. What the heck you gonna do?
Boil.
But yeah, okay, that's what I was talking about, the riptides.
No, what you're going to do is you're going to cook chicken.
Mm. Yo Mama's hot sauce, if you guys haven't tried that, so good. Yeah, the first one I got, I don't know if it's because of shipping it or what, but as soon as I took the plastic off, the top disappeared, it fell off. And I tasted it, and I think I got a piece of glass on my throat. But I poured it out, took it to the store. They let me replace it with a new one. This one is all good, but you gotta taste that. It's so yummy. So freaking yummy. Okay, 9:51. Let's see.
Oh wait, it's almost 10.
Okay. Okay, so this is by Billy Yank 2008.
2008. That's a weird.
Yeah, it looks like he's a key lime pie with a cherry on it or something. I was in Vienna and was trying to cross a wide street. I looked left and it was clear. I looked right and there were a lot of cars, so I sat with my head out, looking right, waiting for them to clear. I heard what sounded like a bicycle bell coming from my right, but ignored it because it sounded like a bicycle bell. The bicycle bell continued to ring and get closer, but I was still watching for traffic on the right. Suddenly, a large streetcar passed, less than an inch, a few centimeters from my face. I felt the wind of it pass and slap me. I don't know why they didn't have more aggressive sounding horn on it, but it was damn close to braining me. My brother turned to me and said, "Whoa, bro, you almost died." I was pretty shocked by how close I'd come to dying, so I went to a bar because I needed a drink to get over the fact that I was an inch away from death. Or was it centimeters? Could it have been
Centimeters. It was centimeters.
Centimeters from death.
Hey, Mom.
What way?
Dang it. Oh, at first I thought it was gonna be a train instead, because like the ding, 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 ding.
Right?
Yeah.
I got T-boned by a logging truck on the driver's side when I was 17. It was inches away from hitting my door head on. Luckily, I remember my dad telling me, if you're ever in a wreck, do everything you can to get out of the way, whip until the point of impact, even if it's just half a second. Knowing this, instead of freezing, I slammed the gas pedal and back driver's side door ended up taking the hit. I walked away with a sore back, but that's it. Didn't even go to the hospital. Good thing you listened to your dad and you put that pedal to the metal. No, bro. In college, I once took a sleeping pill and I started to choke on it. I then started laughing as I was choking because of the idea of my death being caused by a sleeping pill. Felt like peak irony. Tell you what. That was by Septic Guy 530. And then Freakzilla said, my cousin got drunk, took a dip and passed out, choked to death, survived 2 hours of Afghanistan, and dies 3 days after coming home. That sucks. You survive war and you come home and you choke on a freaking dip? Oy vey.
What's a dip?
It's chewing tobacco you put in your lip. Don't ever do it, son. Will you promise me that?
Yeah.
Don't ever be chewing tobacco. You might choke on it and die.
Yeah. Definitely. Just kidding.
This is by Septic Guy 530 again. In college.
I see.
Oh,
Yeah.
same thing. Okay, Nerd Desnordens was shot at as a teenager while delivering pizza. They were trying to rob me, but I wasn't responding because I had my music up and didn't notice them gesturing in the lane next to me. Bullet broke both front door windows and passed right in front of my face. I hit the gas through a red light and then tried to evade them on my way back to the pizza shop. They shot at me again from the road, but I finally made it back to the parking lot. Cops never caught them. Dude, can you believe Tupac Shakur?
Wait, there's another thing from.
Yeah, well, that's somebody underneath. But Tupac, his death, after 20 years, they finally have a warrant where they can search somebody's house to find out what exactly happened.
This is one.
Jim Goes Mail, or Geo's Mail. Jim Geo's Mail. Hit as a pedestrian in a crosswalk while I was in high school and fully immobilized. I remember when I was in high school, every time I crossed the street, I'd get pure anxiety because I felt like I was going to get hit. And I do feel like that's how I was supposed to die for a long time, but then it finally went away. Because I'd always run across and look both ways, and yeah, it was scary. Have you ever had that? Where you feel like you're going to die some way and
Years
then
later.
you don't? You want?
Right. I'm just saying we're at years later.
Hit as a pedestrian in a crosswalk while I was in high school and fully immobilized. Years later, while in college, got into a snowy car accident and suffered a severe brain injury. In between the two, had a toxic breakup with which temporarily took away my will to live. Feeling better now. Yeah, that stuff happens, you know. Don't chase them. Just be you and try to find happiness within yourself, because that's where it all stems from. You don't find happiness in somebody else. You find it within you. Oh, he's taking off his shirt.
Cornholio.
He's the great Cornholio. He needs tea before his bunker. Are you threatening him? Do not threaten my son. Marion Berry 686 says, I was electrocuted at the age of 9, technically dead for several minutes. At age 22 in San Francisco, when a drunk driver jumped the curb and was heading straight for us, when his tires blew and he veered and missed us by inches. Lucky you, because my mom was actually killed by a drunk driver, and that fucked our whole lives up. L Rose 222 said, when I was born, I came out not breathing because I choked on my own poop. That's what Kinsey did. She had poop in her eyes and her nose and mouth. What? Yeah, because it was like such a tight squeeze. She pooped on the way out, and it got in her nose and her mouth and her eyes. So they had to put this goop in her eyes.
Not touch my eye.
So she didn't get blinded. And it's called meconium aspiration syndrome. My daughter had that. When I was 12, I found out I'm deathly allergic to certain antibiotic families. Got prescribed them and had such a severe reaction I almost died. So grateful for my beautiful life. These kids are allergic to any antibiotic as far as the psyllin family. My daughter Kenzie, not allergic to anything, so I think it's genetics and not really because you were born with poop in your fucking face.
And we got 2 minutes, so we might as well shut it down right now.
Oh, yeah, you want to fight about it? Here we go. One fight out? Like, here we go. We gotta do the outro show. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. I'm so glad you can join me during story time with me, TessaTNT. Also for Reddit Ghost Stories. And we really didn't get into any ghost stories because we were talking about almost dying. How different people did that. But it was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And thank you to all of my friends on Facebook. We Are Paradox Media's KPNL Radio, Twitter, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, any forum that you're listening from. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. From wherever else you may be listening beyond the Omniverse. Had a wonderful time. Can't wait to do it again. Tomorrow night we have Mr. Steve Ubini on Stop It. And he will be talking about the mysterious death of Lisa Marie Presley, as well as Skinwalker Ranch and other things. Perhaps his book on Tesla that he's been working on. We can't wait till it comes out. I can't wait to read it. He's such a good author. I'm so good into that. Don't forget, you guys, we are all in this together. Together, we can make the world a little better. And together, my friends, we are Paradox Media, because without you, there is no us. Until next time, nighty-night, love and light to all of my yous out there. Take care of yourself. Keep cool. Keep calm. And just try to enjoy this gift we call life. Nighty-night, love and light. Good. Good job. Good job.
It's a good beat to it. Stop.